And here's what makes this pattern even more complicated. When you grow up handling emotional responsibility too early, you start to believe that your value comes from being useful, calm, strong, or accommodating. So in adulthood, you don't just avoid asking for help. You convince yourself you don't need it. You become the problem solver, the reliable one, the person who never wants to burden anyone. But this self-reliance isn't confidence. It's a learned response from childhood, created to keep you safe in an environment where your needs felt inconvenient or unsafe. Psychologists often note that these individuals develop what is known as a caregiving identity, the belief that your role is always to support others, even when it comes at your own expense. You apologize before expressing a need. You choose harmony instead of honesty. You avoid conflict because conflict once meant danger, chaos, or emotional instability. And over time, this leads to emotional exhaustion. Not because you were weak, but because you've been operating as the strong one since childhood. Another long-term impact is difficulty recognizing your own emotions. Many adults who grew up too fast can identify everyone else's feelings instantly, yet struggle to understand their own. You can read subtle shifts in tone, tension, or body language, but when someone asks, "What do you feel?" you don't know how to answer. This is a common outcome of parentification. Your emotional awareness was directed outward, not inward. Let's go even deeper. Children who stepped into adult roles early often grow up believing that rest must be earned. They feel guilty when they relax. They feel undeserving when life goes well. They feel anxious when things are peaceful because their nervous system is conditioned for unpredictability. This is where hypervigilance becomes a lifestyle. You monitor everything, people's moods, tones, changes in behavior, because your brain learned to detect threats before they formed. And even when the environment is safe, your body stays alert. This can lead to chronic stress, burnout, and difficulty trusting calm moments. In relationships, these childhood patterns show up as discomfort with emotional intimacy, choosing partners who need fixing, avoiding vulnerability, working hard to earn love, difficulty receiving care without feeling indebted. None of this is intentional. It's simply familiar. You learned love through responsibility, so adulthood repeats that script. But here's the critical point. These patterns were created for survival, not for a fulfilling adult life. They protected you as a child, but restrict you as an adult. And healing begins with recognizing that difference. You are no longer the child who had to manage the room. You are no longer responsible for other people's emotional stability. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to need. You are allowed to be supported. And you are allowed to exist without performing a role. Because the truth is simple. Growing up too fast wasn't strength. It was adaptation. And now as an adult, you have the chance to build a life that isn't based on survival, but on balance, connection, and genuine self-worth. When dysfunction becomes familiar at an early age, your nervous system quietly adapts. Chaos becomes normal. Stillness feels unsettling. Peace feels suspicious. And love starts to feel like something you constantly have to earn or repay. This is the psychology of a child forced to grow up too soon. It isn't simply sadness or hardship. It is a form of complex developmental trauma that shifts the way you relate to people, to safety, and to your own identity. You might ask yourself, why would a child take on responsibilities that don't belong to them? Why would they step into that role at all? Because children are wired for connection. They will do anything to maintain the bond with their caregivers, even if it means sacrificing their own needs, emotions, or natural impulses. The decision isn't conscious, it's instinctive. When safety is missing, the child trades authenticity for attachment because belonging is a matter of survival. That isn't weakness, it's intelligence. It's the nervous system doing whatever it must to keep that child emotionally alive. But the difficult truth is this. What protected you in childhood can become a barrier in adulthood. Many people who function well on the surface, the responsible ones, the achievers, the calm problem solvers, are often guided by a wounded inner child they never learned to hear or comfort. So we overachieve, hoping success will secure affection. We silence our feelings to avoid conflict or abandonment. We care for everyone around us while secretly longing for someone to pause, look closer, and ask, "Are you okay?" That quiet dream, the dream that someone might finally notice your struggle, see past your strength, and offer support without asking for anything back. That dream doesn't belong to the adult. It belongs to the child who never received that safety. The first step toward real healing isn't correction, it's recognition. You cannot repair what you continue to dismiss, so long as you tell yourself, "It wasn't that bad. Other people suffered more. I turned out fine." You continue to invalidate your own history and reinforce the very patterns that hold you back. And yes, fine can be another mask. Sometimes it's the most convincing one of all. So what becomes of that child when they grow up? They become adults who don't feel safe even in peaceful environments because their body still expects something to go wrong. They become partners who struggle to trust softness because gentle love feels unfamiliar or temporary. They become givers who can't receive because accepting care feels dangerous or undeserved. These adults apologize for their emotions. They turn away from compliments. They confuse exhaustion with achievement and silence with strength. They work endlessly, not because they want to, but because rest feels irresponsible or unsafe. This is the real cost of growing up too fast. Because if your childhood taught you to be strong instead of vulnerable, to stay quiet instead of honest, to fix others while ignoring your own inner fractures, then the adulthood you inherit is one where you are constantly holding your breath, waiting for someone, anyone, to tell you it is finally okay to release the weight you've been carrying for decades. And the truth is, you're not waiting for permission from others. You're waiting for permission from yourself to stop surviving and start living. Here's the truth. No one is coming to rescue the child you hid away. You are the one who must return to them, offer support, and say the words you never heard. You didn't deserve that. You were only a child. You can rest now. This is where shadow work begins. Not fixing, not performing, not covering pain with forced positivity, but turning toward the parts of yourself you abandoned and saying, "I see you. I hear you. I'm here now." That is the repair process. And it's difficult, because it requires feeling the grief you never had space to feel. It asks you to acknowledge the anger, the sadness, the unmet needs, to mourn the birthdays where no one showed up, to grieve the innocence lost while trying to protect people who were supposed to protect you. But that grief isn't failure. It's evidence of healing, a sign that what was once numb is finally moving again. Now let's look at how these survival patterns appear in adulthood, often quietly and unnoticed. You may become the therapist in your relationships but never allow others to know you fully. You may be praised for your independence while secretly fearing you're a burden. You may enter relationships where you overfunction, constantly fixing, managing, explaining, then wonder why resentment builds. You may struggle with boundaries because saying no still feels unsafe. These aren't personality traits. They're coping strategies, learned, conditioned, and, importantly, reversible. But only when you stop glorifying your strength and begin respecting your wounds. One helpful step is asking your inner child, "What did I need back then that I didn't receive?" You may hear, "I needed someone to tell me it wasn't my fault. I needed someone to ask how I was feeling. I needed room to play, rest, and laugh without fear." And slowly, you begin providing those things to yourself. Not to erase the past, but to prevent it from repeating. This is how you stop looking for parental figures and partners. This is how you stop confusing anxiety with intuition. This is how you stop running from the younger version of you and the person you re-becoming. Carl Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything to avoid facing their own soul." Shadow work asks us to face it anyway. All of it. The ignored parts, the ashamed parts, the scared parts, the angry parts. Healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world shaped you into something else. So if you grew up too fast, understand this. Your maturity was never the issue. The issue was that you didn't have a choice. But now you do. You can choose gentleness. You can choose rest. You can choose to stop carrying everyone else's emotions and start acknowledging your own. And no, it won't shift instantly. Some days you'll feel young again. That's okay. That's part of the process. Let that child return. Let them cry. Let them play. Let them finally be acknowledged. You're not broken. You're becoming whole. And maybe for the first time, you're growing in a healthy way. Not through pressure or fear, but through honesty. You didn't get the childhood you needed. But you still have a future. And this time you get to shape it.